Hi, it's Charlie Minato from halfwheel.com, and today I am giving you my thoughts on this, which is the XIKAR HP Humidor. Now, HP stands for high performance. XIKAR has used that moniker on some other accessories over the years, and I think that XIKAR is the category leader when it comes to cigar accessories, certainly in terms of the amount of different types of accessories it makes and where you can buy its products, shops all around the world. But what's interesting is I think this is the first desktop humidor from the company. They've made travel cases and travel humidors. They've made the humidity gels that they use to humidify humidors. They make hygrometers to measure the relative humidity. They have a distribution deal with Boveda. They also have made a fan one time that you were supposed to put in a desktop humidor to help air circulation. But in terms of an actual desktop humidor, this might be the first. And it debuted last year at the IPCPR convention and trade show. It's offered in this black finish, also in a brown finish. It's got metal accents all the way around, so you can see right here. The feet are metal. The bottom of the humidor looks like this. You're going to hear the removable tray most likely fall down. There it is. So this is felt. This is metal. I'm not sure why they didn't put felt on here, but it is what it is. There are metal accent pieces on both sides of the humidor. And then if I turn it around, you can get kind of a sneak preview of the special part of the humidor. So down here, you'll note that there is an electrical plug, and that is because this humidor has interior built-in LED lights, which I'll get to in a second. You can also see down here the humidor is limited, so it's limited to a total of 375 of each color, only 250 of which went to the US. So somewhat limited. Now, it's priced at $300. I think the street price is actually closer to about $260, $270, but officially $300 for the humidor. Now, dimension-wise, so from its widest points, from those two metal pieces at the back, it is 13.675 inches from the front of the handle to the back of the humidor. So this way, it's 11 inches, and height-wise, from the bottom of those feet to the top of the lid, it is 6 inches. Now, those dimensions are useful, but they're not the most important ones, and that would be the interior dimensions. So when you open it up, you can see that the removable tray, in fact, did move around, so I'm going to remove that. And I measured the inside of the box, so the interior where you could actually use for cigars. And so if you measure from here to here, and then you do the rest of it, I got to about 530 cubic inches. Now, what's interesting about this is XIKAR says this humidor is a 75 count humidor. Normally, those counts are in Corona sizes because that's the smallest, so it makes it sound like it's bigger than it actually is. But I think at 530 cubic inches, it can probably fit 80-ish 6x50 Toros. So definitely more than 75 Coronas. I think that's easy. You'll note that I only have 3 Bovedas in here, and that's because if it's a 75 count humidor, Boveda only recommends 3 Bovedas, 25 for each Boveda. I would actually recommend, if you have this humidor, if you're going to get it, that you put 4 in. So I'm going to show you the special feature, and then we will go down the pros and cons. So when the humidor is closed, it looks like any other box right here, and it is not battery operated, it's wall operated. So it's got a standard universal type plug. We can do that YouTube trick. Is it going to pick it up? There we go. So standard plug. And so you just plug it into the back left-hand corner. And I will admit that this is not going to show up as well during or with the lights on. So I'm going to turn the lights off and show you, but you can still see that's what it looks like with the lights on, and if you pull it out, that's what it looks like with the lights off. There is no on and off switch, so if it's plugged in, it's on. If it's plugged off, or if it's not plugged in, it's not on. Now, there is a trigger to activate the light, so it doesn't stay on constantly. And the trigger is basically, and this will be much more obvious when the lights are off, but the trigger is basically once it clears this lid, it turns on. So once it closes here, the humidor is not all the way closed, but the lights are off, and you can kind of maybe not. All right, so with the lights out, you can much better see just how powerful that light is. And it does create an interesting effect because the light's only here, and so it kind of bounces off here but gets diffused. You can see it's much stronger up here. I will note that LED lights are not necessarily the greatest when it comes to how they look on cigars. So if you see here, this looks okay. This kind of looks awkward. It's particularly awkward. I'm going to throw up some pictures so you can see with the shadows. And then the other big thing is that when you have a cigar with cellophane, it just doesn't look good under LED lights. It gets blown out completely. I don't think there's much that XIKAR could do to avoid that, and LED lights are much better than using traditional lights because they stay nice and cool, which is much better for your cigars. They also use less electricity. But I do think that the lighting solution maybe isn't as great as it sounds on paper, and this is no different than how it is oftentimes in the big cabinet humidors with LEDs. They're just not a great way to light up cigars, in my opinion, but to each their own. So I'm going to close the humidor down, and I'm going to show you the trigger mechanism. So like I mentioned, if it clears the lid, the light turns on. So at an angle here, you can see the light is still on, still on, still on. Now it turns off, back on, off, on, and you can tell all throughout that the humidor didn't actually close. So it doesn't need to close all the way, it just needs to get very close, and then once it's opened, the light turns on and your cigars are illuminated. All right, so back to the pros and cons. So the first pro is that light. I think it's cool. I'm not sure that it's the best feature I've ever seen in a humidor, but certainly I think that some people might enjoy it. For me, I find LED lights to be a little bit too harsh. I think it's particularly awkward, and you'll see some pictures we're going to throw up here. Because the lights are in here and only in the front of the humidor, it kind of creates this weird effect, and particularly with cigars in cellophane, it just doesn't look good, if I'm being quite honest. Now, I do think that this is a very well-executed solution. They actually put a channel in for the LED strips. Let's see. It's probably not the best angle. Oops, no. So you can kind of see the channel right there, or no, you can't, that's the back of it. So you can see the channel totally right there. So you're not losing any space in terms of the LED strips. That's a lot better than if I were just to put an LED strip in here, and there's no wires or anything hanging out. So I think it's very well executed. If you want an LED strip, there's not a ton of options in desktop humidor land for you to have that. Also, the second pro, I think the hardware, the metal pieces that are used are actual metal. And I know that that seems like it should be pretty obvious, but you'd be surprised even at $250, $300, there are some humidors that are supposed to be, high-end humidors that use plastic pieces for not necessarily all of them, but at least some of them. The hinges are metal. Everything that looks metal is metal, and that's a very, very nice feature. And third, it works. Once again, I think that I should have put 4 Bovedas in, but I just sort of went off based on what XIKAR was saying. And so if I pick up the Bovedas, this has been being tested since, I think, January 2nd, actually. And so there's still, after over 3 months and 3 of the colder, drier months, there's still a little bit of moisture left. They're not completely dry, but you can tell that they're, and it's pretty clear, particularly in person, that these are not going to make it probably more than another month, even with the wetter months coming up. I will say that one thing of note is that while it was being taxed because of how dry it was during the winter months, the humidor hasn't been opened much. It's probably been opened less than once a week. And so maybe those two things balance out, maybe they don't. I definitely, once again, would recommend you put 4 Bovedas in, but it certainly does work. One little trick here, you've seen me catch this twice now, is to put the tray in this way first, because if you put it in evenly, or if you put this in first, it'll catch the LED strip. So definitely do it that way. In terms of the cons, the first one is actually related to the tray. I like the tray. I think it's nice and it easily removes itself, but all that comes in the box is the tray and the power adapter and the humidor. That's it. There's no included hygrometer. There's no included humidification device. They couldn't even throw in a few Bovedas. And it just really feels bare bones at $250, $300, and it shouldn't. It should feel like you're getting a full humidor package. I certainly would rather XIKAR do this and charge $300 for the bare bones versus charging $350 for a cheap hygrometer and a cheap humidifier, although I would also say that XIKAR doesn't really make a ton of cheap cigar accessories. So if they were going to include XIKAR products, you would get good products. The second is that the lid. And it's, once again, it's not necessarily due to the fact that there's anything inherently wrong with this lid, except that at $300, I would expect it to be magnetic. It is not, and so that means that if you have a hygrometer or humidification device that's got a built-in magnet, you're going to have to go ahead and place a sticker or something on the back. Once again, not the end of the world. However, at $300, I expect more, and you should too. And the final one is a bit subjective, but I think I think there is room for an objective criticism on this regard, which is that this doesn't really look like a XIKAR design aesthetic. I'm particularly miffed by the wood pattern. I think that if they had gone to a matte, smooth finish, I think it would have made a lot more sense. I think gunmetal for the accent pieces, I guess you can't see that, but if this was gunmetal versus the silver, I think that would have been a step in the right direction. It just doesn't feel like a XIKAR high-performance accessory, and to be quite frank with you, those accessories are not my favorite look. but this just doesn't fit in. And I think if you're a hardcore XIKAR fanboy or fangirl and you put this next to all your other XIKAR accessories, I don't think it's going to look great. I think it's going to stand out and not in the right way. And the black is a lot better than the brown when it comes to that particular topic, in my opinion. So should you buy this humidor? I think under one very specific circumstance, I'd highly recommend it, which is if you absolutely must have an LED light in the interior of your humidor. You basically have three options. You have this. There's a Tommy Bahama humidor at about the same capacity and at about the same price point. I would say this looks better. The Tommy Bahama one, the light is built into the lid, which seems awkward, but there certainly is another option. And then you also could DIY. You could find your own solution. I don't think you'd end up with something as nice as this in terms of how well it's integrated. So in that regards, I would say this is probably the category leader when it comes to the very small and peculiar category of LED light strip enabled humidors. However, for any other purposes, I would recommend that you spend a bit more money, buy a Savoy Executive or a Diamond Crown, maybe even a Daniel Marshall second B-stock type humidor, and I think you'll get a much better humidor, one that's going to last you much longer and without as many issues compared to this XIKAR. But for more reviews of those humidors or anything else to do with cigars, including cigar news and coverage of cigar-related legislation, please check out halfwheel.com.